Thank you.
We'll move on to our next delegate, representatives of Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, led by, I presume, Marie-Claude Girard and her team. Good morning and welcome. Whenever you're settled in, you'll have 5 minutes to address the committee. We're in your hands. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. Let's start again. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the committee for allowing us to present comments today. Donc, merci beaucoup. My name is Marie-Claude Guérard, and I am AFC's Assistant Deputy Minister of the Corporate Management Branch. I am here today with my colleagues online, Karen Dunford-McIntosh, Director General of the Real Property and Asset Management Directorate, and Pascal Michel, Directeur Général of the Ontario and Quebec Region Directorate, within the Science and Technology Branch, and also Joel Wilkin, Director of our Real Estate Services at AFC. AFC is pleased that the city has acknowledged AFC's shadow and impact assessment study and has recommended a pause on phase 2 of the baseline development until such time as further research can be done on how to mitigate the impacts of this proposal to the CEF. To this point, I would just underline that we do not have the same concerns about the first phase of the development, which we believe will only have a minimal impact on the farm. Indeed, our concerns will always be rooted in the impact of any future development on the integrity of our research activities, which remains at the core of our work at Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. As our Deputy Minister made clear when she appeared here at the Planning Committee meeting on September 20th, AFC remains open to work with the city and other interested parties to find creative solutions that facilitate important objectives like increasing housing supply and public transit expansion while protecting the farm's critical role in ensuring we have a viable and dynamic agricultural system in 10, 50, and 100 years. Thank you again for this opportunity, Mr. Chair, and we are ready for any question.
Merci beaucoup, Conseiller Brockington.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for coming today. We appreciate hearing from your department on a very important issue. Just to confirm, the staff recommendation before committee today is approving Tower A, which is the most southern tower in this development. And as you said, I think your words were taking a pause, not approving or rejecting towers B and C, but studying them further to understand the impacts. Does Agriculture Canada support the staff recommendation that's before the committee today?
AFC support the recommendation and find that it's an acceptable compromise.
Excellent. Okay. City Council directed staff to reach out to Agriculture Canada and the National Capital Commission to form a working group to discuss how to mitigate, among other things, shadowing on the farm. Have you been part of those discussions, or are you aware of whether the working group is actually meeting and discussing this matter?
A first conversation between our Deputy Minister and Mr. Devine has happened. I was not there, but and there's the intent to continue conversation in the working group with the city.
Okay, yeah, the working group is between city staff, NCC staff, agriculture. Mr. Devine is, Councillor Devine is a councillor, so the actual formal working group, they have not yet met?
It's right.
Okay, fair enough. What is your department doing? You're the federal department. You have the opportunity to pass federal legislation to further protect and strengthen the farm from external factors. Nothing has happened. in years that I've been a councillor. Is Agriculture, Agri-Food Canada discussing potential legislation or other options to further protect the integrity of the agricultural and research lands of the experimental farm in central Ottawa? What else can you and your department do to protect these lands?
As I mentioned, AFC and as part of the Government of Canada, we are supporting, we are really aware of the housing challenge across the country. It's part of the priority within this current government, and I'm talking about Government of Canada for sure. We have internal conversation. We have 20 research centers across the country. We have several lands across the country, and that subject, it's in the middle of our conversation. There's no specific, as you mentioned, is there any specific law in development? No, it's not. But the conversation occur. You want to add something?
I appreciate you coming today. I thank you. The reason why I asked that question is we shouldn't have this discussion every time there's a development application near the farm. The ground rules should be established. The working group hopefully will help identify some of that and ensure that whether there are building height maximums or other ways to mitigate the detrimental damage to agricultural lands, that has to be ironed out. So it's not fair to the developers, it's not fair to the community that we have this discussion over and over again. So I think we're on the right path to get there. And I appreciate you coming down today, but my ultimate goal, working with past MPs for Ottawa Centre, is if Agriculture Canada can do anything to help protect this giant nationally important lands, then please exercise that option in addition to working group with the city and NCC and other opportunities. But if there's anything else to add, I'm all ears.
Yeah, I'm happy to say so. Part of that complex equation is appraising correctly the nature of the work that is done at the CEF. So I've appeared before here and I've made clear that although it is green, this is not a green space. Although it has tree, this is not a park. Although we see crops, this is not a farming operations with cash crop. This is a research facility, right? So at the core is appraising impact. And I think we can work closely with staffer and any other stakeholders to better define what impact means for a research facility such as that. And with that instruments, everyone would be way better tool than to take appropriate decision. For example, when we hear that there is no impact on the CEF, what really it means right now is that there is an alignment with the parameters that we see in a policy document, which at the core does not recognize proper impact to the central experimental farm. So this is very achievable. I think we're ready to work collaboratively, but very meaningfully there. Of course, we also look at our custodianships over 100 years of research in there. We've presented the point very clear that this is not a trailer that you move to a place to another. There's hundreds of years of know-how about this. We are creating real value. We may have mentioned that if we eat bread today, you eat bread probably with innovation done on the exact land and possibly very much on the baseline side between Fisher and Maryvale, and to exact space there. So there's probably a great way forward to better measure impact and also look at the great challenges that we have food-wise, climate-wise, environmental-wise, and housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brockington, and I assume that you'll be asking the question around working group progress of staff. So we'll look forward to that answer. Councillor Hill?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thank you to the delegates that came in to represent this issue. I recognize, as a former member of the Department of Defense, the razor's edge you need to walk when you're representing your department while at the same time representing really the federal government as a whole in your delegation and in your public narratives. And I just highlight that because in your letter to staff, you identify that its recognized baseline road is a Main Street corridor in the city's new official plan, and that the city's transportation master plan includes a proposal for the eventual development of a bus rapid transit line. This will continue to bring further development and proximity to the Canadian Experimental Farm. As a result, we encourage the City of Ottawa to consider the impacts of high-rise developments on the Canadian Experimental Farm and its crop research that's vital to our future. And we encourage the city to work with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada to minimize the impact on our research landscape. And I read from this statement somewhat opposition to density and dense housing and intensification along that transit corridor, which we're receiving encouragement from the federal government to pursue. We're in the process right now of a Housing Accelerator Fund application, which is encouraging us to be innovative. And, Minister Fraser said back in September that, we expect cities to legalize housing more broadly, and we expect cities to be building more housing near transit. And so I really want to understand from your perspective as federal government representatives here today, that we understand the challenge that really you're putting us in as a tenant in the City of Ottawa, that's in some ways asking us to suck and blow at the same time. So I would really like to understand, how you are looking at, your responsibility as the, Central Experimental Farm, Agri-Food Canada, Agriculture Canada, at looking at mitigating options whereby, potentially some of this research could be done in, Portage, or in Carp, or in other parts of Canada, so that we can, compromise and move forward collaboratively on our shared responsibilities, which are broader than simply protecting your ability to do your farm experimentation, which it's important to acknowledge, but so is increasing our housing stock. Over.
Thank you. And again, AFC is really supporting the acknowledge there's an housing challenge across the country here in Ottawa, and really wants to be part of the solution. That's why when I mentioned that we want to collaborate with the city, we want to through that working group, find creative solution just to continue to path, maybe find compromise. But it's through those conversations that I think we will get there. But totally with you, housing, it's a priority. It's a priority of Government of Canada, and we're there to support and in line with that.
So I appreciate that. I think I will wrap it up here. I'm still conflicted though in that, do we listen to the Minister of Housing and his commentary on innovative requirements for growth and, housing necessity in a time where, we're trying very hard to find affordability in this city, versus the ability for the farm to do its experimental mandate on that location versus other areas in its corporate portfolio. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. Just to flesh out what my colleague just mentioned about Minister Fraser, to my knowledge, I don't think Minister Fraser has weighed in on this matter at all when it comes to the likely outcomes of our housing accelerator funding as it pertains to development on the farm. I don't think that has happened to my knowledge. So thank you very much for being here. And as Councillor Brockington just said a little while ago, and you confirmed that you are prepared to support the staff recommended approval of Tower A, even though Tower A will have some impact on your farm. So it's not at all a question of AAFC is saying, don't touch anything here. You are, and in that way, you are supportive of intensification, so long as it doesn't compromise your research. So frequently at this committee, I do hear my colleagues speak about the interests of farmers and how generally farmers across this nation, of which my family has a history of farmers too, and that farmers generally are not as concerned with shadow impacts as we seem to be debating here today. But it's fair to say, more than, as you said, Pascal, this is not a green space, this is a laboratory, and more than you employing farmers, you are scientists of farming. That is a more apt description of who you are. You are not farmers, you are scientists of farming. And this is your laboratory. And allowing this much variability to come into your laboratory to a scientist may be akin of allowing the kids to let the messy dog walk through their lab. In your laboratory, this land here at Baseline and Fisher, are these among the best lands, plots in your laboratory?
Yes, they are. For many reasons, from an agronomic reason, I don't want to go too technical about this, but this is flat, this is well drained. The data that we have in their plot there go a long way. So this is our powerhouse. This is our biggest kind of attractor in terms of like knowing small parcel crop research on different grains that you eat. So this is the prime part of the Central Experimental Farm. Thank you.
And so I can understand your concern. And it's always been that way. It's not like 10 years ago, you made this land better by pouring some juice into it. Over the past 100 years, this has always been the best part of your laboratory. Is that rightly so?
Well, I'll put the context. The beauty about the Central Experimental Farm, it has different patches of land that represent different representation of Canada. So the whole farm has some value, yet in terms of like what we are doing for the crop research, the small parcel crop research, that strip of land is for sure a jewel within the CEF.
Understood. And as I can just try to understand the role that the Central Experimental Farm and the role that Agriculture Canada plays for Canadians across the country, and I also understand that your research has global implications. There's a line from your letter, climate change will bring many new stresses on crop production, which can only be mitigated using adaptive research techniques. The time for deferring climate change mitigation research to a future time is over, and the fields of the Central Experimental Farm are our laboratories for the crop varieties of the future that farmers and the nation will depend on. Can you speak to the potential risk that Canadian agriculture could face if your historic research at this prime location were as compromised as what could happen here today?
Yeah, well, the statement stays true in the fact that the Central Experimental Farm has been in the years and is right now this year as well on the ground having very pragmatic, tangible research with innovative new seeds that are adapted to the future, that are adapted to what we've lived through this Western Canada, they're adapted to floods and droughts and different temperatures and different insects coming into the Canada. So this is the real life. This is a threat that is happening right now. And in the first line of protections for those threats are new knowledge and tools. And this is where the magic happens in developing those new knowledge and tools. So the CEF is part of a network of those farms across Canada and has been extremely meaningful in moving innovation forward for the hundreds of years back.
Great. Two last comments, Chair. Like we have the letter from the Heritage Impact Assessment. I'm quoting from it. Based on the AAFC shadow analysis, it would appear there is significant impact. The AAFC's analysis is persuasive. Their concerns seem valid. Considering that broader development around the farm is imminent, there is potential that the role of the Central Experimental Farm as a place of research will be irrevocably compromised. I'm trying to extrapolate what the future of agricultural research would be if that was irrevocably compromised. I just want to wrap up and just to create a link between the spirit of collaboration that you brought to the table and the spirit of collaboration that the developer has brought to the table. So I have had many conversations with AFC where I've tried to, I suppose, broker a creative think outside the box solution that might see us being able to benefit from significant intensification at this corridor that would meet the developer's goals and meet the farm's goals of protecting its research. I understand that the ideas that I bring aren't always the perfect solution, but I really do welcome a continuing spirit of collaboration between The working group that I'm very grateful that Councillor Brockington struck, if councillors can be involved in that, I'll bring donuts, and AFC, and more creative collaborations, donuts created by Canadian Wheat, and more collaborative discussions between AFC and the developer as we try to work towards some kind of workable solution. Thank you, Chair.
Mhm. Donuts. Councillor Tierney?
You say donuts. This meeting is off the rails. Okay. First of all, thank you, delegation, for coming out today. And one of my council colleagues raised something I think that's important, is when we get excited about certain items, suddenly it's like, let's have a working group. Let's go quick. And when it comes to federal government, the speed of molasses in the federal government is even slower than the municipal government. So I guess I'm asking the delegation, no conversations have taken place since what we were talking about with the other Carling property in the past?
We had few conversation with the city, and a meeting is planned early in December, and we will continue to collaborate. That's where we are, but we're ready to have the conversation with the city.
Okay, and so following up on that, we're dealing with a whole variety of different issues of emergency, as you could appreciate, climate emergency, housing emergency, environmental emergency. There's just a lot of emergencies. And I don't know how to set the priority, like cows farting apparently creates a lot of GHGs too. So, there's just a lot of emergencies right now, and it's very frustrating. I need to know, because it's your government, and I just spent a week with a good councillor colleague, Johnson, on the Hill. The top priority, from what I could see, was housing. It was housing bar none. It wasn't even a question mark. And that really puts us at odds. So I guess I'm asking, do you have approval from Minister McCauley to be here today to say that your emergency is a higher rank than a housing emergency?
I can talk for Minister McCauley. We are there as a representative of AFC, and I can talk for the political aspect. Thank you.
But Minister McCauley is aware you're here today speaking on behalf of the government?
Minister Office is aware that we are here today. Yeah.
Okay, aware. Okay. And the other challenges I'm hearing from a lot of people are related to the fact that this land, maybe in the past, it was in the middle of a goat trail or, a dirt road or whatever the case may be, but it really doesn't match the real agriculture that exists today, because there's, of course, a lot of leaching, oil on the roads, things that we're trying to eliminate, but it's not a typical farm site. Do you guys have additional sites, or are you prepared to start looking at more real farm-related sites? This seems a little awkward. It's in the middle of a city, right? Like it's not typical.
So again, our first line of reaction is to work collaboratively to find the right compromise with preserving this prime site right now. And of course, we can do, and we are doing research across Canada on different sites that have different also orientations and values as well. This site is particularly well suited for the research that we've just presented on adapting to climate change, for example. And it is representative of good farming across different sections of Canada. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. And we'll agree to disagree that, a parcel of land in the middle of a metropolitan city, where 1 million people, is regular, but that's fine. I have no problem with that. It's more about the fact, can you please ask Minister McCauley to speak up on this specific item, because I'm not hearing it. And if I'm going to have to pick a crisis, I'm going housing. And that's where where I put all my eggs on this one. But I do appreciate you coming out, very brave. But I just don't think it aligns with where we're headed as a city at this point. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kitts?
Thank you, Chair. You can likely anticipate my question. I know you said you're happy that phases 2 and 3 will be taking a pause. How long do you envision that pause being?
I think where we land right now, and not, je fais pas un jeu de mots de terrain, we are ready to work in a working group with the city. And again, as soon as possible, we'll continue the conversation. I don't have any timeline in my head. I think understand that there's current challenge, issue, pressure on the timeline. Okay, we are ready to collaborate and continue the conversation with the city.
Okay. And you heard the applicants say that they're working towards having this come back in front of us in January. From your point of view, do you think that that's realistic?
I can't speak for the applicant, but I'm ready to have a conversation in the working group.
Okay, that's great. So there's no sort of further study you need to commission that would have a certain timeline associated to it?
At this time, we just need to start these conversations because we understand the pressures on all sides and we want whatever the outcome is to be informed. So we aren't commissioning or deciding on future studies right now, but the first launch group on December 14th, I'm certain those things will come up and we're going to expedite those discussions for sure.
Okay. So let's say on December 14th, you decide that there's XYZ studies that need to inform. Would that then push the timeline for phases 2 and 3 out to allow for those studies to conclude?
Depending on the nature of the studies and what's required to commission them, perhaps, but I just don't have that information here.
So you don't have all of the information you need today?
No.
Okay.
Not to define a timeline.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I am another councillor that represents an outer urban ward, and so I can appreciate certainly the sensitivity that my colleague is looking to give to the farm while respecting the transitions that came through the previous delegations. But I am concerned that we continue to discuss the value of the farm, the significance of the farm, the abilities of the farm. I think we sort of tied it up in the conversation on 1081 that we really do value the farm and want it to succeed. But as my council colleagues have described, you know, it's for many of us, I think it's not a matter of when the discussions begin, but when the discussions will conclude. Because the city of Ottawa has such a limited ability to raise revenue that these units are required to not only support other activities that are within the purview of a city, but also to fund directly the community benefits that those neighborhoods need in order to welcome this density. So it is a snake eating its own tail, and our outer urban wards are fully prepared to absorb a lot of density. So my question is really, can we, from your experience in a working group, can we get an understanding of this working group from your perspective covering off all sides of the farm for all kinds of development? Or would this be a working group that would look at sort of specifically just this side of baseline, like, and what would be the terms of reference implications for the working group from your perspective that could get us as close to the end as fast as we can for the most certainty for the city of Ottawa?
We haven't developed terms of reference. I'm anticipating that'll take place promptly on December 14th. We'll discuss specifics, but also what we're really hoping to see is lines of communication defined so that these types of things don't continue to happen. I sense the frustration. And also how this information is shared, to whom and when. Clear lines of communication is the first piece. So that's very broad. But yes, I'm sure the first meeting will be specifically touching on baseline.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And we'll have more questions for staff. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Carr.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here today and taking the time to come out. I'm the ward councillor for Alta Vista, so not too far from the experimental farm. So I understand how important it is. And I believe it's bigger than Central Park, about 400 hectares. And my question is, since it's my understanding, it's been around since about 1886 or so, and obviously there's been a lot of development around the farm in that time. So in terms of obviously other developments have been a threat, continue to be a threat. We've been talking about intensification for years. I'm just wondering what steps the Department of Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada has taken internally prior to these developments being proposed around the edge. Like, is this something that the development around the edge was identified, like in your enterprise risk enterprise risk or corporate risk profile, enterprise risk profile? Is this a risk that has been identified for how many years? And what mitigations has agriculture and agri-food taken over the years in order to mitigate the risk of development that we've known as coming for many years? Or is this really just been a risk that's been identified over the course of the last couple of months when these applications have come up? Like, it would be important for me to understand a little bit about that sort of work that agriculture and agri-food has taken over the last number of years.
Thank you for the question. I would say, as soon that AFC has been informed that there were some development along baseline or around CEF, we started to reach the city and try to start the conversation, because we saw at that moment a risk on the integrity of our research. That's how we play it, and again, that's the same way that we play it today. Collaborate, try to communicate, try to get the right information, and again, find solution. That's how we manage it. No.
Okay, that's helpful. Yeah, no, I just wondered if it was something that was identified as part of a risk activity over a number of years, and if there'd been mitigations like that the federal government had put forward in terms of like trying to purchase properties around the edge to mitigate. But it sounds more as if this has just been really since these applications have arisen. Thank you again for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Carr. Councillor Curry, Ms. Durnford, I'm going to guess McInnes, we'll have you up as a delegation in a little while. It's not an opportunity. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry.
I just wanted to add
You wanna
to
respond
the
to that?
answer to Ms. Carr, if that would be okay.
Chair, I'm uncertain
Please
what's
go ahead,
happening here.
Briefly.
I can't hear.
Oh, okay. It sounds like the audio is cut out again for,
We can hear you now, Jeff.
are you able to hear me now? Okay. And I am sorry, Ms. Durnford McIntosh, please go ahead and provide a brief reply to Councillor Carr if you wish.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, yes, there are developments that are happening. There was a designation of heritage that was added to the farm several years ago, and that was in part to, help protect the farm. We work closely with the National Capital Commission as well and Parks Canada when there are developments. So even though there may not have been a specific risk identified to these specific developments, we are looking at ways to make sure that we protect the farm in its entirety. So there are things that we're doing internally to assist. Just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Curry.
Yeah, thank you for that. Just a couple quick questions. Following on what Councillor Carr was asking in terms of risk. I mean, my understanding is for many years, the farm has had to manage the fact that the salt from the roads, all the roads that surround it, ruin a lot of their research on the fields that are right at the road. And so when I think about this working group, I'm wondering, what have you done so far to sort of adapt to the changes? That you've had the salt issue. Have you then moved fields? Have you changed that type of crop, that you could plant a crop that doesn't mind salt or doesn't mind shade, more shade-loving plants? Have you done some of those things already? I'm just concerned that this working group might be more of a, how can we prove to you that these fields are so special that nothing can change?
Again, the key word there is adapting mitigating and having compromise that let us carry the mandate that we have as a research entity there. And so far, we've been able to do that. But to your suggestions, I'm hearing that we call into the working group to address broader type of other mitigation measures. We're welcome to consider that as well. But so far, and it's been through many different other projects, yes, we have been, and I've expressed that in front of this committee, in a meaningful interaction. I'm reasonably optimistic that we can reach those mitigation points and compromise that allows us to carry on with our research and do proceed with the priorities that you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one other question. So even you would think about the working group would maybe even look at just instead putting the cattle out there that would love some shade?
Well, there's many things you can do on agricultural lands, and there's different options in front of us. Indeed, that's all I can say. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Good. So, Mr. Chair, I have questions for staff, I guess, after about the zoning. Thanks.